What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back again. Another day, another trade rumor video. So if you guys are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. I'd love to have you guys here. Join the squad. We're talking Leafs all the time. So as you guys know, we're getting closer and closer to the NHL trade deadline, and that means that teams like your Toronto Maple Leafs are going to be looking to make some big changes. Now, we mentioned it in the last video. The blue line is definitely where the Leafs need to improve on. Maybe a little bit of depth, maybe a little bit of depth scoring. So there's a lot of areas that they need work on. But the one thing that we need to get to, and we will get to that in this video, is cap space and how it works and how it will work for the Maple Leafs and how they can afford some extra players, some extra talent coming to this team. But the reason why I want to bring this up is because of a section from the 32 Thoughts segment from the 32 Thoughts written podcast by Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, or this piece I believe is just from Elliot Friedman. Shout out to the Rink Rat Report that posted this on Twitter. But one exception may be Toronto. So this is just about the Leafs. If the Maple Leafs trade this year's first, they will have one pick in the top two rounds. Now, the reason why he's saying one exception is because apparently teams are not willing to trade that first round pick that they have. They might not be willing to give it up because they're excited for the upcoming draft. They want to see what's going to be there. So basically, it's not impossible that they decide to move it, but they definitely prefer the opposite and aren't interested in moving Easton Cowan, Matthew Nyes, or Fraser Minton. And we are going to be making a video on those three definitely in an upcoming video. I've already done some research, but one case where I do believe they would have done so is if they had acquired both Chris Tanev and Nikita Zadorov. Now, we know Zadorov went to the Canucks, but there's no doubt in my mind the Leafs want Tanev, but Calgary is holding to see if that first round comes into play. But if Toronto really wanted to do it, they would have done it already. So we will see. So he would help them, and they know it. And maybe Toronto tries to solve this all by trading for both Tanev and Hanifin. He also adds that they're looking for another center as well. But there's a lot to unpack here, and we're going to get to all of it, trust me. But the first part is interesting. A lot of teams not willing to give up that first round pick in trades right now. But if teams were willing to do that, a lot of trades would have already been made. So first round picks are like one of the most coveted trade assets that you can acquire. It's a mystery box, but it's also the round where you're going to see the most talent most of the time. It's where you see a lot of NHL talent come from, especially if it's a high pick or a low pick, depending on how you look at it. But the Leafs, if they would have already offered a first round pick to Calgary, they probably would have Chris Tanev in the lineup, which, looking at it as a fan, I would have done it already, and I know that it's a bit of an overpay. Tanev is fantastic, but I don't know if he's worth that first-round pick. But if this team wants to be good, if they want to be contenders, they have to add guys that can play 20 to 24 minutes, maybe even pushing to 25, that can play sound defensively, block shots, and do a little bit of everything, and Chris Tanev can do that. Now, if you're able to also get Noah Hanifin, which I don't know how they're going to be able to do that, you do it. You try to figure it out. And that's where there's a lot of conversation going on about whether or not the Leafs are going to have to shed some serious money. Because if we look at the cap situation in terms of what the numbers are for these players, Hanifin's at a really nice $4.9 million. So even with 50% retention, you're still looking at roughly $2.7 to $3 million, depending on how they're able to break this contract down. He's only 27 years old, so this guy would fit right in with the Maple Leafs and the age that they have right now. 26 points in 50 games so far. He has 9 goals. That's more than a lot of the forwards on the Maple Leafs. But again, the sticking point is the fact that the Maple Leafs don't have $5 million. And then when you also put into account that they also would want a guy like Chris Tanev at the same time, potentially $4.5 million, even with that half retain, they still don't have the money to really pull it off. But we will look at how they can. The points don't really matter too much for Chris Tanev because the guy is a shot blocking machine. We've brought this up before. But what I want to go back to is this. Maybe Toronto solves this by trying to trade for both Tanev and Noah Hanifin. Maybe. This isn't some sort of confirmed report. This isn't Elliot Friedman saying that this is something that they want to do. But the fact that they were willing to try to go after Tanev and Zadorov, and they were trying to do that, speaks volumes, because that means they were willing to give up one of their young prospects and more than likely willing to give up that first round pick. So I will say the Leafs do have assets to make something like this happen. And if you're saying they don't, they definitely do. And we'll get to that in another video. But just to give you some sort of context, Easton Cowan is a really good prospect. Fraser Minton, a really good prospect. And you're not even touching Matthew Nyes yet. You're not talking about Topi Niemela. They have 2 first-round picks. They have pieces to make something like this happen. But it's this that's the problem. And do I think they're going to move all those pieces? No. But it's this cap space. Currently, right now, they're sitting with about $43,000 in cap space. But as you can see, this roster is quite full. You have guys like Pontus Holmberg that will end up going to the minors. You have guys like Bobby McMahon that will likely go to the minors. That's all if the Leafs don't decide to move a guy like Ryan Reeves down there. And as you're seeing, this cap space isn't really moving. So if you try to bury a Ryan Reeves, you're I don't know why this cap space isn't moving. Something's wrong here. But regardless, the Leafs will be able to make some money work. I think there's some glitch going on here. But the Maple Leafs have guys that they're gonna send out. They're gonna send down. Yeah, there's definitely something wrong with the cap space right now. But I feel like they're gonna end up trading a guy like Connor Timmins. And then the next big thing is, do they trade TJ Brody? Because that removes $5 million. You end up being able to take a guy that has the modified no trade clause and you go, look, we're going to utilize this $5 million elsewhere. Brody is still a decent defenseman. You attach a sweetener, a prospect, a pick to it. There might be teams that are willing even to take him because they want him as a depth defenseman. Would I love TJ Brody to be a bottom pairing guy with the Maple Leafs and stick around? Of course. If they acquired just one of Tanev or Hanifin, you're more than likely holding on to TJ Brody and you're working with the pieces around him. But if the Leafs have to shed a lot of money, especially if they're going to try to acquire 2 big name defensemen at the same time, you're more than likely trading a TJ Brody and a Connor Timmins. That would give you $6.1 million right there. That would fit in both if you're able to do some salary retention there, or it just slips in one of them, no problem. And then you go on from there. You figure out other ways to make it happen. Some people are bringing up the fact that the Maple Leafs could trade Tyler Bertuzzi. I don't think they want to do that, especially going into the playoffs. The same goes for Max Domi, and it would be pretty hard for them to trade guys like David Kampf or Callie Yarncrook, because I think Yarncrook is a good piece to move up and down the lineup. He's hurt right now, but he's a guy that the Leafs like to use. David Kampf, again, this is a guy I think the Leafs would trade, $2.4 million. I mean, if you traded Kampf, Timmins, and Brody, like you have $7-8 million to play with there. You would be able to acquire 2 defensemen. I'm not saying that that's the package that I would trade. It's just you figure out ways to get these guys off the books. Same thing with Ryan Reeves. Only $200,000 of his contract would count against the cap if you send him down. But again, it's one of these things where we have to move pieces around. We have to make trades, and I don't know if Brad Treliving is willing to make these substantial moves and moving multiple pieces left, right, and center to try to acquire 2 defensemen at the same time. I know these are guys that he knows, but if the Leafs trade all these guys, and sure, you add Tanev and Hanifin to this team, you can go Riley Hanifin, you can go Benoit McCabe or whatever. You can do whatever you want. You can do McCabe, Tanev, Benoit with Liljegren. Like there's your blue line would be substantially better, but there's a lot of pieces here. There's a lot of moving parts, and it would be quite difficult to pull something like this off. And again, as we move closer and closer, as we continue to make videos, I'm going to tell you guys how this is possible, but it's almost like fantasy Candyland, as I like to call it, where it's almost nearly impossible to acquire both these guys unless you make substantial moves. So I want to know what you guys think. I always turn it over to you guys because I want to know what you guys think. Should they trade for one of them? Should they trade for both? Who would you trade for? What kind of package would you do? Because that's another thing. If you guys comment what you think the trade package would be to acquire one of these guys, I'll make a video on it and we'll talk about it. I haven't done a video like that in quite some time. So if you are new here, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Like I said, join the squad. I'd love to have you guys here. Let me know, will Big Brad pull off a big move? Peace.